Yo, what up, and welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen, I got another Peter Zeihan video for you. It's fresh from this year. I don't know exactly when, but I know it's from this year, and it's here recently. So, with that being said, I want to make sure that everybody understands something. I never follow anybody 100% about what they say. I check out what they say, and then I do research on it. You know what I mean? And I apply logic to it. And I'll be honest with you, you know what I'm saying? I think a lot of his predictions are going to go the opposite way for the next 4 years, or until the public stands here and decides that they no longer want war. And I think that's going to be very soon. So without further ado, let's get into this right here, have this conversation and see what he has to say.
Hey everybody, it's been 2 years, but I'm back. It's been a crazy last 13 months, and I'm going to say a lot of things that are probably going to upset all of you today. So I want to start with something simple, something that can unite us, something that we all agree on. So let's start with politics. Now, the American political system, getting some feedback here, I'll move back. The American political system is designed on a first-past-the-post system, which is a fancy way of saying that if you want to win the seat, you don't need to get 50% of the votes, you just need one more vote than the other guy. And what this does, it encourages our parties to be big tent parties with lots of members, because it's all about getting one more. And so we get 3 sets, one for the Republicans, one for the Democrats, and then swing voters in the middle. This is how we have run things since our last political reshuffling in the 1930s. But for those of you...
All right, well, let's go back real quick and look at this, you know what I'm saying? Because I think it's kind of important to understand what he's saying here, right? So the Democrat voters are black, gay, socialists, under 30s, Greens, union workers, single women, and pro-choice people. Swing people are Hispanics and Catholics, and Republicans have the business, national security, evangelicals, populists, pro-life, and fiscal conservatives. So I want you to understand that, nobody is one of these things, all right? None of these are a monolith, other than maybe the black people as a whole, right? You know what I mean? Because, well, I'll be honest, man, I don't know what the hell to say about them, because they continually vote for Democrats, even though they just keep fucking them over and over again. But they refuse to vote, Republican. All right. Anyway, let's keep banging.
This is how we have run things since our last political reshuffling in the 1930s. But for those of you who have not been in a coma for the last 5 years, you may have noticed things are breaking down. So let's start with Republicans. The business community likes reliability. We haven't had that. The national security voters actually preferred Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump, because she was the only member of the Obama administration who had some concept as to how the world worked.
Now, this is absolutely true, and this is where guys like me and MC, we kind of bump heads, right? And y'all don't know who MC is. Y'all need to go check out his channel. He's a great channel. Look up MC on YouTube. He's pretty amazing. You know what I'm saying? He's a military dude. I think he's Dan Carlin's secret brother that they never talk about, just to be honest with you. But MC is a national security guy, right? Through and through. He is a heavy duty national security individual. Whereas I have more nationalist leanings, where I'm like, I really honestly don't care what happens in the rest of the world. I really, really don't care about NATO. I don't care about the Middle East. I don't care about the Asian countries. I don't care about any other country on the planet but mine. And maybe Mexico, Canada, and, some of the, Puerto Rico, Guam, the small place, the places down in, the Caribbean Sea. I know Guam isn't in the Caribbean Sea, I don't think. Right, but Cuba, places it's places that are close to us. You know what I'm saying? That would affect us as a whole. But really, the rest of these places get bombed out, and the rest of us wouldn't even notice. To be honest with you, oh man, all of India went missing. Well, too bad. Tomorrow's Wednesday. You know what I'm saying? Yo, let's keep rocking.
Evangelicals looked at Trump like, you're on your 17th affair that we know of? One with a porn star. So they had a split. The pro-lifers know that Donald Trump had been an ironclad abortion rights supporter for 30 years. The fiscal conservatives couldn't look at his tax returns. This caused problems. But it was messier on the left. I mean, black.
Well, let me say, fiscal conservatives literally don't care about his goddamn fucking tax returns, right? They really didn't. You know, I mean, fiscal conservatives tend to be individuals who just don't want the government to have a whole lot of money. You know, I mean, like, you know, fiscal conservatives are more like, yo, why do you keep taking, like, yo, if you're cheating on your taxes, good for you, buddy. Show me how you did that. You know, that's a fiscal conservative in the end of the day.
Black Americans, they loved Barack Obama. And what's not to love? A 40-something black dude from Chicago. Loved him. Hillary Clinton was a 60-year-old white chick who'd already lived in the White House. Not interested. The socialists, I gotta admit, I love Senator Bernie Sanders. He's just so reliably and delightfully out of touch all the time. He hated Clinton. And to the degree that people who supported him showed up to vote at all 4 years ago, most of them voted for Trump. The unions despise free trade. They like Trump on merits. Pro-choicers had the opposite issue with Donald Trump of the pro-lifers because they saw him flipping sides. And then in the middle, the Catholics just looked at both sides and wanted to take a shower. And here's where we actually ended up 4 years ago. The lines got blurred. Factions were in motion.
All right, hang on. Let's go back to this right here, and you know, we'll put this up just so like y'all can see exactly what he's saying, right? Because I think this moved a little bit too quick for, you know, I mean, all of us to really look at and break down, right? You know, I mean, so the Republicans had the populist Republicans, not the populist as a whole, the populist Republicans, because there's a populist movement on the left, which are batshit crazy. But, you know, I mean, the populists on the right, you know, are QAnon people, so they're just as equally as crazy, I guess. I don't know, right? You know, the Pizzagate thing, just like it sticks in my head, to be honest with you. It really does, because every once in a while I hear about some stuff. Like I heard about some stuff today, it was bananas. But anyway, right? And we'll get into that, you know, I mean, in another video, I promise, right? So, I mean, but the swing voters are Hispanics, Catholic, business people, national securities, union, and the pro-choice. Now, all right, depends on what union you're talking about, right? Because state workers unions and regular unions like the Teamsters are two separate things, right? Individuals who are cafeteria workers or people who work in a mill are two different people, right? People who, you know, I mean, work at a state building and individuals who make something for a living are two separate different individuals as a whole. And that's important to understand. It really is. You know, Greens, who gives a shit about that? Keep going.
And here's where we actually ended up 4 years ago. The lines got blurred. Factions were in motion, which means that the old way of thinking of right versus left no longer really applies to this country. So let's look at this from a different point of view. 2x2 matrix. If you're at the bottom, you think the government should play a role in regulating social morals. If you're at the top, you want the government out of your personal life. If you're on the right, you want the government out of your wallet. And if you're on the left side, economic liberals, you think that the government should play some sort of role in managing the economic system, and that requires taxes. And of course, if you're in a corner, you can combine these. So if you're in the top left, a social liberal and an economic liberal, you look forward to the glorious day when all private property has been confiscated and we're all wearing government-issued gunny sacks. And if you're in the bottom right, an economic and social conservative, you think that the food stamp program is bad for character building, and in fact, starvation is probably the way to go. Here are our swing voters. Here's our traditional liberal alliance, and here's our traditional Republican alliance. Okay, everybody got that? I'm gonna put everything up at the same time, and now let's go through where we are today. First things first, Donald Trump brought a political group out of the cold. The populists have always been the red-headed stepchild of the Republican coalition. They've always been in the background. They've never had a nominee. They've never even gotten into the cabinet. They've been treated as a vote bank. And Donald Trump ended that. And so we got upwards of 15 to 20 million voters who hadn't voted in the last 5 elections who suddenly showed up. That's why Hillary lost. And they are now, in numerical terms, by far the single largest component of the Republican Party. And so the Republican Party today, well, actually I should say this, the Republican Party on January 5th had more voters in it than it ever has in history. What about the fiscal conservatives? George W. Bush ran 6 of the 8 largest fiscal deficits in the history of this country since World War II. Only to be topped by Barack Obama, only to be topped by Donald Trump, and that's before coronavirus. They don't have a horse to back anymore. Trump didn't like it when they tried to make something happen, and so he kicked them out of the party. They're no longer represented in Congress, they are not in his administration, and they are not in existence in the Republican Party leadership. National security conservatives were treated very badly under Donald Trump. They were treated as political props. We will hear from excuse me, we're going to hear about that, I have a feeling, here in about an hour. Between the way that they were treated, between the pardoning of contractors who were convicted of murder, between the various ways that the Donald Trump administration has pushed people out, whether it's Mattis or somebody else, we're talking about an entire institution, the military, the intelligence communities, law enforcement, who no longer feels that the president has their back. They also have been kicked out of Congress. They also have been kicked out of the administration. They also have been kicked out of the party. They're swing voters now too. The business community, social mores have evolved a lot in the last decade. Issues like inequality, issues like environmentalism are getting into boardrooms. And when we had 8 years of Obama and 4 years of Trump where nothing was really done on either of these issues, the business community realized that they had to work with urban centers to push these issues along themselves. And just like the fiscal and the national security conservatives, they butted head with Donald Trump. I think of those 3 groups as kind of the math and maps crowd of the Republican.
Now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, Donald Trump really went to war with China, right? That's really what that has to do with. The reason why the business community didn't like Trump anymore is because Trump was killing their baby, right? Like, what happens when we're no longer going to be doing trade with China and these individuals like the NBA or Nike or Hewlett Packard or Microsoft or Google or whoever it is wants to be in a Chinese market? What happens when they can't count on the United States government to back them up anymore? Well, you got to find a different horse to back at that point. That's really what happened.
Party. And just like the national security and fiscal conservatives, they're no longer represented at any level of governance. It's not all bad for.
Now, don't get anything misunderstood, all right? Biden's cabinet is full of Goldman Sachs and Wall Street executives, and don't get anything misunderstood about that. There's a whole bunch of people in business who are in government. The whole FDA is basically run by people from, Monsanto and individuals like this, and lobbyists for, places of this nature. So don't get anything misunderstood. They're still there.
For the Republicans by any stretch, because the populists by themselves added more voters than the Republicans lost with these 3 factions, and Trump's not done. Unions, membership tend to be socially conservative, and that has manifested hugely in the last few years. For example, the president of the AFL-CIO was in the Oval Office publicly extolling the benefits of NAFTA 2 with Donald Trump on the day that Donald Trump was impeached by the Democrats in the House. The first time, not the second time. Second time's not till tomorrow. They switched. We saw it in the voting numbers. Catholics have kind of followed the evangelicals down the path towards deeper social conservatism. But unlike the evangelicals who were able to maintain their position as a single block, the Catholics had a really sharp split. And on one hand, you had Catholics who went in a more secular direction, who are almost like lowercase c now, they're so secular. And on the other hand, you have a group of Catholics that are practically evangelical with their social beliefs. It's a smaller core, but is far more reliably pro-Trump Republican. The real surprise for a lot of
Now, don't get anything misunderstood about that one either. Like, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, Pope Francis, who's the head of the Catholic Church, it's a super leftist. And we, as a Catholic, if you hate that, you just go, yeah, I'm cool. Yeah, I'm cool. You know what I mean? Like, I'm good. Like, I'm not interested in all your, like, let's turn all the kids trans nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, legit.
people are Hispanics. Hispanics, and particularly Mexican Americans. Second generation Mexican Americans define themselves as gringos. They see themselves as white. They are the most socially conservative voting bloc in the United States, and Trump won them over time and time again. Trump actually captured most of the border communities in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The issue that they are most conservative about? Immigration. They like the wall. They want ICE to have power. The only type of immigration that Mexican Americans support is family reunification, and only for their families, nobody else. And Trump carried it.
Y'all, man, like I keep telling y'all, like, there's like legit, there's some of these immigrants that they're bringing in, right, are not going to vote for the Democrats because their beliefs don't match up with the Democratic beliefs. You know what I'm saying? Like, they hate the gays, they hate the single women, they hate the pro-choice, you know what I'm saying? They hate the socialism. They're just not in it. They left a situation where they were running away from that, just like the Cubans down in Florida. Same type of deal. You know what I mean? They want to make money. They don't want more people here to compete with labor. You know what I'm saying? Like, they get it. They completely understand it.
This today is the Republican Party, a social conservative core without the math and maps crowd. Now, things obviously are going differently with the Democrats. They haven't just lost the unions in the hope of getting the Hispanics. They've deliberately kicked out the socialists. Biden repudiated every single major socialist policy push during the debates. He brought Barack Obama out of retirement to put some bullets in the heads of a few people's political careers. But really the big thing is Kamala Harris. She's a freaking DA. She has put a lot of people in prison, and the socialists loathe her. And of the 700-ish appointees that Biden has announced so far, not one of them is from the socialist camp. And they're furious. They probably should be. Now, I'm sure some of you are like, wait, what about Portland? Well, let's talk about Portland. Now, this is exactly what it looks like. This is Darth Vader in a dress, riding a unicycle, playing a flame-throwing bagpipe. Portland is not normal. You should never look to Portland as an example of anything but Portland. Portland is no more representative of the United States than Disney World is.
That is a really good point. And I've said this before, and I say this over and over again, like, y'all, look, I know that a lot of people on here, either A, if you have traveled in the United States, you've traveled, and when you did, you found McDonald's and Starbucks and whatever all around you, right? And like you lived the same way you lived when you be at home, and you ran into people who, were like you when you were at home, whether it be black or white or Hispanic, whatever the case might be. But here's the thing, right? If you go to like places like Portland or New York or Jersey or Boston or PA, Philly, Baltimore, they're not going to look like your home. Like, Atlanta looks nothing like Trenton. All right. Like, they're fully different places. Okay. And the type and character of the individuals who live there, the culture of the individuals there will be far different than anything you're used to. So understand something. When you go to Portland, yeah, there'll be Starbucks and stuff. But the truth is, there'll be a shit ton of small little itty bitty coffee shops, right? There's going to be, you know what I mean, open, you know what I mean, fish markets and places where you can get stuff that you can't get anywhere else in the country. There's cultures inside of the United States. And Portland is not like the rest of the country. It's really not. I don't even know how to put it, man. Like, yo, it's something else. It's Germany, right? When you really come down to it, it's like Berlin or like, trying to think here. Like, it's trying to think of like a city. It would be like, man, Europe. You know what I mean? Shoot, like Bavaria type of deal, right? It's a whole different animal, right? It's very, very liberal, very, very open, right? But it has a lot of cold weather to deal with every year. It's right on the ocean. You know what I mean? It's a port city, but like it doesn't have a whole lot of visitors who come to it, like other than Asians, right? So like it doesn't have a lot of immigration in it. You know what I mean? As far as things are really concerned, like you're not going to have a whole bunch of people coming into Portland, right? Because like you're not going to have it like you had in New York and Boston, where you know you could have Africans, Egyptians, you know, Europeans, Middle Easterners at any given time hopping off a boat, you know, because that's the type of ports are there, because it borders like a whole bunch of different cultures. Portland's not like that. Right, Portland has its own thing, and it's been its own thing for a long, long time. Sorry, let's keep rocking.
In fact, if you think of the Black Lives Matter movements, it dominated the news for a big chunk of last year, right? Everyone talks about how big they were, but if you eliminate the very first week of them when it all started, and Portland, we never had a single day where we had more than 100,000 people protesting nationwide. Usually it was in the low single digits of thousands. It's not that it's not important. It's not that we should ignore it, but it wasn't this giant movement that we all thought. We had just been in lockdown for coronavirus, and we're just, looking for anything to take up our time. So this is where we are. Social conservative core, a Democratic coalition is a little all over the place. Or that's where we were until January 6th. Now, in my opinion, most of the media has collapsed as a functional institution in this country. We're not getting the facts. We're not getting the context we need to put those facts into perspective. So, of the many, many...
It's strange how everybody but the media sees this. They could save themselves just by telling the truth, but they just refuse to do so.
Stories that came out on that day, I want to focus on one. The Capitol Police officer who died. He was murdered. He was hit in the head, bashed his skull in with a fire extinguisher. A different person then drug him out and threw him into the crowd where he was beaten to death. One of the people who beat him used a pole that had the American flag attached to the other end. We also know that the president was fully aware of the type, of the quality of people that he was attracting to Washington. Now, I'm sure we're all going to take our own lessons.
Let me say this, man. I don't like this classist shit, right? I hate this mentality. The quality of people who he was attracting. Like what? Like he was attracting molesters and rapists? No, he was just attracting poor people who were down and out and have been shit on for the past 20 years. I don't see that as a negative thing. Like you should listen to those people and you should talk to those people. They're important. They're people. They're part of your country. There's blacks and Hispanics and gays and trans and all the other people are too. We have to talk to everybody. That's an important thing. We're all people. It's important we address our concerns. And these people have not been able to address their grievance for a long time. And it's not white supremacy if you're poor and you have no power. And the first time you try to flex your power, you're immediately called terrorists. That's wrong. Don't put that out.
From this, but for purposes of today and this conversation, I want to focus on one specific thing. The Republican Party no longer owns the law and order topic. And that changes things, because the political faction most obsessed with that topic is this one. They have supply chains, they have staff, they have assets. And if they can't rely on the president for law and order, then they are in the wrong party. And if you look at the folks that Joe Biden is nominating for his cabinet, almost all of them are strongly pro-business. This may well be the face of the new Democratic Party. Now, I don't want anyone to get too excited or too dejected.
I told you this already. Tom Pease already told you this. And a lot of y'all are going to have to wait until like Thursday this week to see this, because it's not going on YouTube yet. You know what I mean? But it will be on Rumble, and it will be on Odyssey. You know what I mean? Which we're going to keep posting up from Rumble. You know what I'm saying? That way, like, we can grow separate channels in places where, we're not going to get kicked off.
Hasn't gelled yet. We are year 5 in a transition process that historically takes 8 to 12 years. And it's not like it's just us. Politics evolve with economic trends and technology and demographic shifts in geopolitics. And in the last generation, we have struggled through the end of the Cold War, massive wave of globalization, the rise of the digital age, and now probably we're on the verge of a massive de-globalization shift. Of course, we are going to do our politics differently.
Let me be real here. Joe Biden's a globalist. All right. And the business community are globalists. The deep state are globalists, and the media are globalists. That's important to understand. Like, Donald Trump may have been anti-globalist, but the globalists have re-signed power again. We're going to take it back away from them, in 4 years. Well, probably in 2, really. It's going to get snatched away from. But, our politicians need to understand that the reasons why people want to vote for them is because we want the hell out of the global system as a whole. Maybe somehow we can start communicating this to them.
Think of France. 3 years ago, their equivalent of the Democrats and the Republicans both imploded at the same time. They are still picking through that wreckage. We will get through this. This will be our 7th political overhaul. This is not the end. This is merely a transition. Now, transitions are painful, they're awkward, they're loud, they're messy. This is no exception. But we will get through this. And whether this excites you or makes you drop into despair, now is the time to act. Because this hasn't set yet. We still have at least a couple more years. And especially if you consider yourself a business voter or a fiscal voter or a national security voter, and you want to still be a Republican, now is the time to take your party back. Because believe it or not, the folks in that circle, not all of them want to grab a canister of bear spray and a Confederate flag and march on the Capitol and kill a cop. There's an uproar in that community right now about what has happened. And they could really use the math and maps crowd again.
Yeah, I want to thank GeoPop for putting this up. I'm saying? They always have great content over there. So, if you ever have a chance, make sure you go and, sub to their channel. Legit, it's well worth a watch. It has lots of great content. It's not just Peter Zeihan, but I usually snatch Zeihan's videos off of there a lot of the times. But in the meantime, I'll be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not really interested in dealing with national security people. And I'm only interested in the business community if it's local. My local supply chains, here in the state. That's all I'm really interested in. If you are manufacturing internationally, I'm not interested in having you in my party. It is what it is. Anyway, look, I'm Tom Pease from Pnoid News. You know the deal. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.